All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, here we are with another NFL Top 10 series. Last week, I did my countdown of the top 10 greatest quarterbacks of all time. So I like to continue that momentum going with the top 10 running backs of all time. So anytime that you make any type of list, that there's definitely going to be certain picks that you're not, that everybody may not agree with. A lot of them that people may agree with, who I consider to be consensus picks. So many of these pretty much, like I said, pretty much for the most part, consensus picks, and as well as as well as people who I feel like are the all-time greatest. And of course, for those that may be watching on YouTube, go to youtube.com/King Von Jr. and make sure to subscribe to my YouTube page. Make sure to like and subscribe. Of course, for more content. And so of course, without further ado, I definitely want to go into the list of my top 10. Of course, my top 10 running backs of all time. And this list is, especially when it comes to running backs, this may be one of the toughest, one of the tougher lists that I've come up with. Even though I say that a lot, and I guess for the sake of representation, regardless of the way that my team is going, I am, of course, Cowboy fan, win, lose, or tie. You know what I mean? So I don't really know this, but like I said, I don't know if too many ties these days. But yeah, anyway, but yeah, like I said, win, lose, or tie. Cowboys fan through and through. So hence, I'm wearing the jersey of the all-time leading rusher, Mr. Emmitt Smith, right now. For those who may be watching on YouTube, but like I said, I'm going to go into my rankings without further ado. And of course, as I did last week when it came to quarterbacks, what I'm going to do is, of course, name the accomplishments before, at least as a hint to who it is, and then I'm going to make my reveal of who makes, of course, who made which ranking. So of course, I'm starting off at number 10. At number 10, this guy, in my estimation, is the greatest Raider of all time. He became the first player in NFL history to accumulate 10,000 rush yards and 5,000 receiving yards. He was also named the Super Bowl 18 MVP for the Raiders at the time, Los Angeles Raiders, and now, the Las Vegas Raiders with Oakland in between. You know what I mean? So of course, like I said, he was the Super Bowl MVP for the Raiders last Super Bowl, in a very long time. And of course the most memorable play of that game was a 74-yard touchdown run. Of course, against Washington. Whatever you want to call them. The R word football team, Commanders, whatever. But he was the key player in a 38-9 rout of Washington in that Super Bowl. And and of course, because of that, he was named Super Bowl MVP, like 191 yards, and like I said, with 190, at least about 191 yards or so, and and of course, several, if you touch, and of course, several touchdowns. But like I say, he was the key player, and they went on to win the league MVP in 1985. And so what I mean. And so of course, this guy, of course, he was a multi-time Pro Bowler. What I mean. Of course, he's a former All Pro, and he spent 11 years with the Raiders, and of course, his last 5 seasons with the Kansas City Chiefs because of a fallout with the late great Hall of Famer Al Davis. So over the course of 222 games, he's had 12,243 rushing yards, 4.1 yards per carry, 123 rushing touchdowns, 17,654 yards from scrimmage, 445 total touchdowns. And he was first ballot Hall of Famer for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2003, and that is none other than Marcus Allen. So, like I said, for me, when it comes to the greatest Raiders, there are so many different names, but the first one that ultimately sticks out to me, that really sticks out in my mind, with all due respect to Tim Brown, but for me, it's going to have to be Marcus Allen. Just like I said, just because he was he was the key figure in that Raiders Super Bowl. Let me slow down, but in my estimation, I would have to say it was the Raiders' greatest Super Bowl season. And like I said, just like I I say, and the fact that he has been underappreciated and the way that he was treated by Al Davis, to the point where he was constantly being pushed to the side, whether it was for Bo Jackson, whether it was even for like even for someone like Eric Dickerson, who's only there for for like a cup of coffee, but not that much, but just whatever it took to undermine his accomplishments. But you can never erase history. Can never erase what Marcus Allen has done for the NFL, what he's done for the Raiders organization in general, everything like that. So so with that being said, Marcus Allen for me is actually at number 10 on this list. So of course, moving forward, number 9. Number 9, you could pretty much say that his 3-year stretch is certainly one of the greatest of all time in NFL history. And of course, like I said, and the thing about it was that even though he only had overall, let me slow down. Even though overall he had only had an 8-year career from 1978 to 1985, and of course spent most of those seasons with the Houston Oilers. He was a former Heisman Trophy winner. I think he was like the first overall pick in 1978. You know what I mean? And this guy was absolute powerhouse. To the point where he was running into linebackers, like actually knocking down defenders. To the point where defenders were even like we're trying to hold on to him, to the point where they were holding on to him for dear life, to the point where they even like ripping his jersey. Of course, like I said, of course, his nickname was the Tyler Rose because he came from Tyler, Texas, and and also he's still the only running back in NFL history to rush for more than 200 yards in 4 games in a single season, and he's also a 3-time NFL rushing champion from 1978 to like I said, from 1978, his rookie year when he was the undisputed NFL rookie of the offensive rookie of the year, to 1979 when he's the league MVP, all the way up to 1980. So that 3-year stretch, what I mean, it's, like I said, pretty much like I said, that 3-year stretch from 1978 to 1980 by far is one of the absolute greatest in NFL history. And the thing is, had his body held up, he definitely would be much higher on the all-time rushing list. So because of that, this guy only played, a total of 115 games, ran for 9,407 rushing yards, a shade under 10,000. 9,407 rushing yards, 4.3 yards per carry, 74 rushing touchdowns, 10,213 yards from scrimmage for 70. Obviously, for the same amount of touchdowns, 74. And because his career ended so early, is cut short only at the age of 30. He went to the Hall of Fame, first ballot class of 1991. He was only 36 years old when he went to the Hall of Fame. Certainly one of the youngest Hall of Famers of all time. And he was also named to the NFL's top 100. The NFL's 100th anniversary all-time team back in 2019. And so, of course, this guy that I'm talking about is none other than Mr. Houston Oiler. The guy that really laid the blueprint for the Oilers later on the Tennessee Titans. He was the precursor to your Eddie Georges and eventually Derrick Henry. And the guy that I'm referring to is none other than Earl Campbell. And he was very influential, especially when it came to, like, I said, the larger, more powerful running backs, like your Jerome Bettis's. He was influential when it came to future Texas star running backs like Ricky Williams. He was also instrumental when it came to, influential when you look at the style of somebody like Marshawn Lynch. A lot of those guys owe their success and owe their owe a lot to his influence. As far as the impact that he made, even it's in such a short time that he had. So he played half as long as Marcus Allen. But at the same time, just when it came to the way that he transcended his position, that's the reason why I have Earl Campbell at number 9 on this list. So, of course, at number 8 on this list, a guy much like Earl and Marcus, was another. Of course, we have another former league MVP. And so I think it was like, in fact, he was the 2012 league MVP, and he was so close, this close to breaking the single season rushing record. You know, and so so of course of course over the course of a of course of course he had a 15-year NFL career. Which speaks volumes, especially considering, um, especially considering how short of a shelf life that running backs have. So he's certainly one of those running backs who's very fortunate and very blessed to be able to, to be able to have a career as long as he had. And over the course of 184 games, he's had 14,918 rushing yards, 4.6 yards per carry, 120 rushing touchdowns, 17,392 all-purpose yards, 426 total touchdowns. And for and of course, over the course of 10 seasons with the Minnesota Vikings, he certainly etched his name among the all-time greats in Vikings history. And he's like the third player in Vikings history to win the league MVP. The first one was Alan Page in 1971, and of course the second one was Fran Tarkenton, like in 1976 or something. But yeah, like I said, like I said, outside of them, this guy's the third Vikings player all time to be named the league MVP, and he absolutely deserved it. Along with being a three-time NFL rushing leader, and he was absolutely phenomenal when it came to size, strength, speed, athleticism. He's still the Vikings all-time leading rusher, and he was certainly the prototype when you're looking for a running back. And he was definitely the last of a dying breed for his time. And he still holds the NFL record, for most rushing yards in a single game with 296. And of course, he ranks top 5 NFL history in both career rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. He's also a 7-time All-Pro selection, 7-time Pro Bowler. And once again, like I said, his name is all over the Vikings record books. You can make a case for him for arguably being the greatest Viking of all time, along with the likes of Randy Moss, and even Fran Tarkenton, and arguably even Chris Carter. But this guy is no other. Obviously, I've already mentioned it. Spoiler alert, I've already revealed everything. It's no other than AP himself, Mr. All Day, Adrian Peterson. What I mean, like I said, it's like I said, excuse me, sorry. When you look at what Adrian Peterson has meant to the modern generation, there's no doubt that he has left an indelible mark. He's left an incredible imprint on the NFL, especially when it comes to running backs of his era. Especially considering the fact that he came in and really dominated at a time where the position was starting to go on a decline, if not declined already. Especially when you look at the way that the game has shifted to more of a passer-friendly league. So because of that, guys like Peterson are in very short supply. Especially in today's game now. But to see him and just to see how dominant he was, and to see how much of an absolute specimen that this guy was, it was absolutely remarkable. And one can only imagine, as I've said with Earl Campbell, and the thing about it is that it's just like one can only imagine if he was on a team that was more of a contender, more of a championship contender, Super Bowl contender. One can only imagine, either that, or if he was just on a team in a much larger market. Now, of course, eventually he did play from New Orleans and Washington, but by that point he was a complete shadow of himself. And so but like I said, no one can deny what Adrian Peterson brought to the table. And he's certainly a future first ballot Hall of Famer, without question. So with that, so of course, with that being said, at number 7, this guy to me was the blueprint for running backs with the LA Rams. Eventually St. Louis Rams, and I guess I'm starting to reveal another spoiler. At 6'3", this guy stood at 6'3", and he was certainly not your prototypical running back. You know, and the way that he ran, it's like he was gliding. This guy, like I said, this guy just just ran with not just so much speed, but just like I said, it's just like the way he was running, he might as well have been on a glider or something. You know what I mean? Like it's just poetry in motion with this guy's running style. And he spent 4.5 to pretty much like 4.5 years or whatever with the Los Angeles Rams from 83 to 87. Unfortunately, he was traded to the Colts, like on Halloween 87. They're from 87 to 91. And eventually, he was with the Raiders, as I said before, 92, and finished his career with the Falcons in 93. But the defining chapter of his career is the time that he spent with the Rams, and he personified um, 80s football. Like the thing is, especially when you look at his image, this is a guy who was synonymous with having a Jerry curl, having the goggles, and and having like that, having like that whatever that neck thing was that he was wearing. You know what I mean? And like I say, he was definitely a one of a kind running back. And especially when it comes to larger running backs, had it not been for him, we wouldn't have an Eddie George. You know what I mean? And as far as that, had it not been for him, we wouldn't see. Excuse me, had it not been for him, we wouldn't have um, running backs that happen to be taller than quarterbacks, that type of thing. And he was, of course, he came out of that famous Hall of Fame 1983 draft class with the likes of John Elway, Dan Marino, Daryl Green, Bruce Matthews, so on and so forth, whoever you want to name, Jim Kelly as well. And he was pretty much pretty much almost in like a class of his own. And the thing about it, I think, plus also at the time that he retired, he was like second all time in rushing, only behind the late great Walter Payton. You know, and of course the defining season of this guy's career was in 1984 when he ran for, even to this day still, an NFL single season record of 2,105 rushing yards. You know, and I read part of his story. Of course, his latest book is out now, and he was talking about how at the beginning of that off season he was actually out of shape, and then over the summer, obviously, got back into better shape, really the best shape of his life, pretty much. Especially considering the damage that he did during this season. And this is a record, even to this day, has still not been broken. The closest ones have been Jamal Lewis and Adrian Peterson, but even with that, they still fall short. And especially when you look at the way the game is played today, that record is in no way, shape, or form going to be threatened by anybody in this league now. Especially when you look at the way that you have these rotations for running backs. Like like for example with the Cowboys, the way that we rotate Zeke with like the way that we rotate back and forth. The way that we rotate back and forth between Zeke and Tony Pollard. You know what I mean? So, and not just with Dallas, but just teams all over the league. Like in terms of this, in terms of splitting carries and rotating running backs and things like that. So there's not like one. There's gone are the days where you have like one consistent, stable running back that's like I said, that's going to carry the running game, that's going to carry your franchise, that's going to be the lead focus when it came to the running offense. You know what I mean? And so this guy that I'm talking about is certainly within that class. He's certainly within that breed where where the running game was at its pinnacle, pretty much a golden age, almost like just about a golden age of running backs, if you will. And you know what I mean? And like I said, let me slow down. He was, like I said, he was certainly the precursor to precursor to not only, like I said, Eddie George and everybody like that, but especially when it came to the Rams, he was certainly the precursor to Marshall Faulk, to the point where his number is one digit apart from Marshall Faulk's. This guy wore 29, Marshall wore 28. And so, and of course, and of course, the only reason why this guy's not ranked ahead of Marshall Faulk is because he didn't win it. He didn't win. Not only did he not win a Super Bowl, but he did not win a league MVP. Now, he would have won an MVP in that 1984 season had it not been for Dan Marino just going absolutely insane and having an historic season, throwing for 5,084 yards, 48 touchdowns. You know what I mean? Just having a very innovative season in his own right. So had it not been for that, then this guy that I'm about to name would have been league MVP hands down, and he was everything that he personified everything that the Rams needed. He was everything that the Rams had, really, if you will. And so, of course, this is none other than Eric Dickerson. And he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, made the Hall of Fame class in 1999, alongside arch nemesis Lawrence Taylor. What I mean? So, like I said, it's just that Eric Dickerson was once in a generation, one of a kind, kind of one of a kind running back. And so what I mean? And of course, even to this day, he actually ranks ninth all time on the all time rushing list, along with being a four-time rushing champion. What I mean? So he's without a doubt, like I said, without a doubt, not only not your prototypical running back, but he created a whole different mold when it came to running backs, and he's absolutely, to this day, will always be one of the most successful players at that position. You know what I mean? And so there was nothing like him before, and there'll be nothing like him after. You know what I mean? So and of course his numbers are like, actually, sorry about that. Actually, skipped. I already read his numbers earlier during his introduction. So, so of course, number 7 on this list is the pioneer of Rams running backs, Eric Dickerson. And number 6 is going to be, you know what I mean. So yeah, I guess I'm giving a spoiler, but of course, number 6, this guy actually went the reverse route of Eric Dickerson. Eric started off with the Rams, then was sent to the Colts. This guy started off with the Colts and went to the Rams. Over the course of 176 games, he's had 12,279 rushing yards, 4.3 yards per carry, 100 rushing touchdowns, 19,190 all-purpose yards, 136 total touchdowns. And of course, he made the Hall of Fame class of 2011. And he was the ultimate do-it-all running back. I mean, he was a guy that was the ultimate, like, utility, Mr. Go-to, pretty much I can do it all at the same time type of running back. So in fact, he's one of 3 players in NFL history to gain, in fact, he's one of 3 players in NFL history to gain 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards in the exact same season. So you want to talk about one of the most ultimate complete players of all time. This is the guy. And he also still holds the NFL rushing record for the most consecutive seasons with at least 2,000 yards from scrimmage, which was 4 straight seasons where he's had 2,000 yards from the line of scrimmage. He's also Super Bowl 34 champion. And he, slow down. He's also Super Bowl 34 champion, and he's also been named the league MVP. And as I said before, he went to the Hall of Fame. So, and of course, like I said, I don't want to give too much away, but this guy was the successor to Eric Dickerson. I know, and the thing is, it was really, really hard, especially with this, in terms of choosing who will go higher. But based off of merit, as far as championship, based off of, based off of merit, when it came to the championship, when it came to winning the league, like I said, when it came to a Super Bowl, as well as winning a league MVP, and just off of his versatility. The guy that I have in number 6 is Marshall Falk. So of course, at number 5, you know, um, this like of course, at number 5, this guy is still, in my estimation, the greatest Charger of all time. And I don't think that's very hard to figure out, especially considering we're talking about running backs. And when you look at the Chargers, there's no other running back that you could think of besides the guy that I'm about to name. Um, Over the course of his 11-year NFL career, he played 170 games, had 13,684 rushing yards, 4.3 yards per carry, 145 rushing touchdowns, 18,456 yards from scrimmage with 162 total touchdowns. He made the Hall of Fame first ballot class of 2017, and he was an absolute nightmare and threat to reach the end zone every time he put his hands on the football. And this guy was the 2006 NFL MVP. He's the 7th leading rusher in NFL history and ranks 3rd in touchdowns with 162, behind only Jerry Rice and Emmitt Smith. He also has other NFL records, most famously the single season rushing touchdown record of 28, and the record for consecutive games with a touchdown, which are 18. And he will rank higher had his team had more success, i.e., of course, for example, be a Super Bowl champion, be a Super Bowl MVP, had a better supporting cast, offensive line, you name it. You know what I mean? So had the cards been dealt better in his favor, had he had a better front office with better opportunities and things like that, he certainly would rank higher. And had it not been for the shadow of a guy like Walter Payton, who was his hero, had it not been for somebody like that, just leaving such a giant footprint on the game, had it not been for him, guys like Emmitt Smith and, you name it, Jim Brown, Barry Sanders, this guy would definitely be higher on this list. I guess I'm giving a spoiler already. But I'm just going ahead and cut to the chase. This is none other than LaDainian Tomlinson. So there's no doubt in my mind that LaDainian Tomlinson is, without question, one of the top 5 running backs of all time. Because, like I said, even though he didn't have the team success, considering his impact across the league, especially during his era, that means a lot. But it just so happens that the guys, of course, like the last 4 guys ahead of him, reach higher heights. They checked off certain boxes, met certain benchmarks that Tomlinson, just happened to not have reached. So that's the reason why Tomlinson is number 5. But that's an honor in and of itself. So at number 4 on this list, I'll say it like this: how can you talk about the Dallas Cowboys, spoiler alert, without talking about this guy? And I guess he gets a lot of flack, especially considering how great his offensive line was. But he ran with a certain science. He ran with a certain technique. You know what I mean? And the thing is, his football IQ, his vision, are absolutely incredible, and he used that along with his work ethic, and the talent that he had and the discipline that he had. He used all those to his advantage to have the career that he had, to carve out the legacy that he had, to carve out the legacy that he has carved out in NFL history. And the thing is, especially when you look at the running backs that came after him, it's like the separation is, it's just pretty much just unbelievable, and and like I said, even though he gets criticism, because of his offensive line, at the same time, there was no other running back that you could really think of at that time that was a better fit. Now, this might sound like a hot take, but when you look at what the Cowboys were trying to build, there was no other running back that you could really think of to match that system, to match that culture, to match um, what they needed to get out of the proverbial NFL outhouse into the penthouse, and this team was deep in the mud. You know what I mean? This team was just fledgling, struggling. Now even though they already had Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman, this guy was the final piece of that puzzle. You know what I mean? He was the final piece of that puzzle to form the triplets and to form a powerhouse, to form a dynasty, to form an empire when it came to football in the 90s. And very few players at that time personified 90s NFL like this guy. And of course, he was a perennial Pro Bowler, perennial All Pro, especially first team All Pro. And of course, he was a three. Of course, obviously the things he's most known for, of course, the fact that he's a 3-time Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP, former league MVP. He's actually actually led the league in rushing 4 times, and he's constantly compared to the guy that's right ahead of him on this list, if you will. You know what I mean? And if of course, it's like their careers constantly match with each other. So of course he also holds NFL records for career rushing touchdowns, and of course the seasons with at least 1,000 rushing yards. So the thing is, he's had 11 seasons with at least 1,000 rushing yards or more, and he also holds the record for career 100-yard rushing games with 78. So he's had 78 100-yard rushing games over the course of his 15-year NFL career. And over the course of that 15-year illustrious career, he's had 226 games where he ran for still NFL record 18,355 rushing yards, 4.2 yards per carry, 164 rushing touchdowns, 21,579 yards from scrimmage, and a total of 175 overall touchdowns. First ballot Hall of Famer for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2010. Co-headliner along with Jerry Rice, the NFL's all-time leading receiver. So it's only made sense that the NFL's all-time leading rusher and receiver went to the Hall of Fame at the exact same time. And of course, he was named to the NFL's 100 all-time team in 2019. And in my estimation, I guess spoiler, like I don't want to say spoiler alert, but at least in my estimation, he is, for me, not only my favorite Cowboy, but my estimation, probably really the greatest Cowboy of all time. Because of the fact that he was a figurehead in resurrecting the Cowboys, and putting them back on the mountaintop that they enjoyed back in the 70s, or at least shared with Pittsburgh back in the 70s. But and of course they had a fall off in the 80s, but because of who he was at that position, the Cowboys rose to prominence like never before during the 90s, winning 3 out of 4 Super Bowls, Super Bowl 27, Super Bowl 28, where this guy was the Super Bowl MVP, and of course Super Bowl 30. And this is none other than, you guessed it, Emmitt Smith at number 3 not number 3, somewhere there. Emmitt Smith at number 4 for the greatest running backs of all time. And at number 3, the guy that I was giving clues about earlier, Emmitt's forever dance partner, the guy that Emmitt will always be linked to. And over the course of a 10-year career with the Detroit Lions, who were the absolute opposite of the Cowboys through and through. This guy played 153 games, ran for 15,269 rushing yards, had 5 yards per carry. That means that each time he touched the ball, he was getting at least half a first down. And he had 99 rushing yards, 18,308 all-purpose yards, for a total of 109 overall touchdowns. Pro Football Hall of Famer class of 2004, first ballot, of course. He made the NFL's 100 all-time team back in 2019, and you can make a case for arguably the most exciting NFL player in history, the most exciting player to ever watch in NFL history. He was the ultimate highlight reel, and with the way that he was just able to defy the laws of physics and escape any situation that was deemed impossible. I mean, you want to talk about breaking ankles as far as football. This dude was the ultimate ankle breaker. The way that he was able to shift um, his motion and stop on a dime and just make a spin at the last nanosecond, if you will. You know what I mean? Like I said, he was the ultimate highlight. He was absolutely exciting, amazing to watch. Um, and of course, even to this day, he's still fourth on the NFL's all-time career rushing list, despite only playing 10 seasons. So that goes to show that he covered a lot of ground. And I firmly believe, I firmly believe that had he not retired, he would have been the all-time rushing leader instead of Emmett. I think, and even Emmett himself knows that. So I'm very certain that Emmett is absolutely grateful that that the door was open for him to continue to march toward greatness and break Walter Payton's record. And you know, and there were speculations as to why he ended his career early. Whether it was out of respect to sweetness, whether it was either that, or at least for the most part, I'm pretty sure that he was tired of losing all the time, or either that, or pretty much like I say, either that, or he didn't want to risk another injury. Sorry about that. Like I say, pretty much I'll say like this: either that, or he didn't want to not another injury. Excuse me. Either that, he didn't want to run the risk of a career-ending injury. So, so pretty much the best way to do things is to leave while you can still walk, leave while you're still healthy. And so he was named of course, of course, he was named the NFL's MVP back in 1997. He was co-MVP along with Brett Favre that year. He's a four-time NFL rushing leader. You know what I mean? And so I would just say like this: him and Emmett definitely split the crown of being the league's best rusher at that time. And he was selected to play in the Pro Bowl every season of his career. And the thing about it is that had his career not ended so soon, you can only imagine how many more records this guy will hold. And this is none other than Barry Sanders at number 3. At number 2 on this list, this guy was the pioneer, the ultimate running back pioneer. A guy that's still alive and still with us today, and of course, and the thing is, his career, his greatness, literally predates the Super Bowl. He actually retired the year before the first Super Bowl season, and he was the face of Cleveland for a very long time, at least until LeBron won that championship. But he spent his entire NFL career with Cleveland from 1957 to 1965. Over the course of 118 games, he ran for 12,312 yards, 5.2 yards per carry. As I said before with Barry Sanders, each time this guy touched the football, you knew that he was going to get half of a first down, 5.2 yards per carry, 106 rushing yards, 15,459 all-purpose yards, and 126 total touchdowns. And this, like I said, for a long time, this guy was the benchmark when it came to NFL, when it came to football players. And Jerry Rice in his 10th season actually broke this guy's, of course, all-time NFL touchdown record. Overall touchdowns, regardless of position. So so as far as that, like I said, it's just a testament to his greatness that he transcended the league, regardless of position. You know what I mean? And and the thing is, he was just like head and shoulders above the rest of the competition. Over the course of his illustrious 9 year, and like I said, over the course of his illustrious 9 year NFL career, he was an 8-time rushing champion. He led the league in rushing 8 out of 9 seasons, a 4-time NFL MVP, selected as an All Pro 8 times during his career. So for him to do that for the majority of his career, so he was pretty much the equivalent of Wilt Chamberlain in basketball. He was man among boys for the most part. And the thing about it is that this guy dominated in an era where defenses were primarily built to stop the running game. This is where a lot of people consider, to consider the era where, where it was like real defense and real football, everything like that. And it was, and the thing is, it was absolutely, it was very heavy on run defense. This is the era that was very run defense heavy. But at the same time, but at the same time, this guy found a way to dominate to the point where he would even drag defenders into the end zone. He's the only running back in NFL history to average more than 100 rushing yards per game, with 104.3. And the 5.2 yards per carry that I just mentioned earlier is still an NFL record even to this day. And for him to win that many MVPs and to be a Pro Bowler, All Pro, all throughout his career like that in such a short span of time is absolutely nothing short of remarkable. And the guy that I'm referring to is none other than Hall of Famer, like I said, innovator, pioneer, member of the NFL 100 all-time team himself, Jim Brown. So, of course, at number one for me is the guy that will always be the face of the Chicago Bears, the greatest Bear of all time. He spent an incredible 13-year career from 1975 to 1987. Excuse me. Over the course of 190 games, this guy ran for 16,726 rushing yards, still second all-time to Emmitt Smith. That's not going to be threatened for a long time either. 16,726 rushing yards for 4.4 yards per carry. With 110 rushing touchdowns, 21,803 all-purpose yards, with 125 total touchdowns. Of course, he made the Pro Football Hall of Fame back in 1993. He was named to the NFL's 100 all-time team back in 2019. Of course, unfortunately, he's no longer with us because of a rare form of cancer that took him away from us at only the age of 45. And to think that this guy, if he was still alive, would have been the same age as my mom. But that's a whole nother note. But when you think of elite running backs, this guy is one of the very first. In fact, he's number one on my list. Nicknamed Sweetness, but at the same time, when he ran, he was absolute savage. He was a slasher. He was pretty much the Wolverine of running backs, if you will. You know what I mean? This guy that a guy that can slash. Sorry about that. Let me start over. This guy was an excellent slasher. He was a guy that would run through defenses, jump over top of you. You know what I mean? Like wherever you name it, he could do it. And his motto was never die easy. So he gave it all on every single play to the point where you had to force him out of bounds. And only 5'10", 205 pounds. This guy was made pretty much might as well have been carved out of rock, out of steel, out of coal. He pretty much built like a diamond, if just about. You know what I mean? And the way that he carried the Chicago Bears on his back. He was a 9-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl 20 with the famous 1985 Chicago Bears. He was a league MVP back in 1977. And by the way, that same season was when he set an NFL record for most rushing yards in the game with 275 yards against the Minnesota Vikings while having the flu. And like I said, and thing about it is that this guy set an enormous amount of records during his time. And even to this day, even though Emmett has broken his record, in my estimation, when you look at the total package of running backs, um, prototypical running back has influenced imprint on the game itself, even to this day. In my estimation, you want to talk about just pure running back, just talk about the total package, wherever it is that you're looking for, a guy that still transcends the game even now. I say, that, like I said, this guy will always, in my estimation, be the number one running back of all time. In that, and I look forward to getting, his jersey eventually. And of course, that's none other than Sweetness himself, the late great Walter Payton. So to recap my list, at number 10, Marcus Allen; number 9, Earl Campbell; number 8, Adrian Peterson; number 7, Eric Dickerson; number 6, Marshall Faulk; number 5, LaDainian Thomas; number 4, Emmitt Smith; number 3, Barry Sanders; number 2, Jim Brown; number 1, Walter Payton. So that is my NFL. Like I said, that's my list of the top 10 running backs of NFL history. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed.